Nights used to feel like the safest time of the day. I'd always believed that once the doors were locked and the lights were off, the world outside couldn't touch me. Back in college, I lived in a small studio apartment downtown. It wasn't much, just a bed, a desk, and a tiny kitchenette, but it was my space and I loved it. I had a routine. After long days of classes and part-time work, I'd come home, put on my headphones, and zone out to my favorite playlists. It was my way of escaping the world. My apartment was on the 3rd floor, so I never worried about things like burglars or break-ins. It felt safe up there, above the noise of the street below. But one night changed everything. It started like any other evening. I got home from work, threw together a quick dinner, and watched a few episodes of my favorite show. By 11 p.m., I was exhausted. I remember thinking, I'll just lie down for a second, and before I knew it, I was out cold. I didn't even plug in my phone to charge, a habit I never forgot. Sometime around 3 a.m., I woke up to a faint tapping sound. It was so quiet I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it. Maybe it was a neighbor or the wind. My room felt colder than usual, but I was too tired to care. I pulled the blanket over my head and drifted back to sleep, but it happened again. 15 minutes later, I was wide awake. This time, it wasn't the tapping that got me. It was the silence. A heavy, almost suffocating silence. I opened my eyes, and something immediately felt wrong. The air in the room was different, like I wasn't alone. My phone wasn't on the nightstand where I'd left it. That was the first thing I noticed. I sat up, squinting in the dim light from the street lamp outside. My phone was lying on the floor near the kitchenette, screen cracked like it had been dropped. I always kept it beside me when I slept, and I couldn't remember knocking it over. I got out of bed, my feet cold against the hardwood floor. As I bent down to pick up my phone, something caught my eye. The window above the sink was open, just an inch or two. My stomach tightened. I never left that window open. I barely even touched it because the lock was old and stiff. I took a cautious step closer, my breath catching as I noticed the mark on the glass. A smudged, dirty handprint, right near the lock. I froze. Someone had been there. Someone had tried to get inside. Or maybe they had gotten inside. The thought made my skin crawl. I turned on every light in the apartment, checking the door, the closet, even under the bed. Everything was locked, and no one was there. But the sense of unease lingered. I told myself it was fine, that the handprint must have been old, even though I knew that wasn't true. I couldn't explain it, but I felt watched, like someone was still there, just out of sight. The next morning, I convinced myself I'd overreacted. It was late, I was tired, and my imagination had run wild. I went about my day, telling myself to forget about it. But when I got home that evening, things felt off. Subtle things. The chair at my desk was slightly pulled out. A cabinet door was ajar. The salt shaker wasn't where I'd left it. Little details that wouldn't mean much on their own, but together, they sent a chill down my spine. And then I found the note. It was tucked under my pillow, a crumpled piece of paper with 4 words scrawled in shaky handwriting. I felt my knees go weak. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. Who could have left it? How did they get in? And why hadn't I woken up? I'd always been a light sleeper. The smallest sound could wake me, but I'd slept through this? I called my parents that night, trying to stay calm as I told them what happened. My dad suggested it was a prank, maybe by someone in the building. My mom wasn't so sure. "Trust your gut," she said. "If you feel unsafe, don't stay there." But I didn't want to leave. This was my space, my home. I told myself I'd be fine. I'd change the locks, install a security camera, and sleep with my phone in my hand. For a while, it seemed like nothing else happened. Weeks went by, and I started to feel normal again. I even laughed at myself for being so paranoid. But then, late one night, it happened again. I was sitting at my desk, studying for a final, when I heard it. Like something brushing against the window. My blood ran cold. I turned off the lamp and stood perfectly still, listening. It was coming from the kitchenette. I grabbed my phone, hands trembling as I opened the camera app. Slowly, I crept toward the window, every step feeling heavier than the last. The sound stopped before I reached it, but when I looked out, my heart nearly stopped. There was a ladder propped against the building, leading directly to my window. No one was there, but the ladder was real. It wasn't my imagination. I slammed the window shut, locking it with all the strength I had, and called the police. They didn't find anyone, of course. The ladder belonged to a maintenance worker who claimed he'd forgotten to put it away. But the timing was too perfect, too deliberate. It felt like a message. I moved out the next week. To this day, I don't know who it was or what they wanted. Sometimes I wonder if it was all a twisted prank, but deep down, I know better. Whoever it was, they knew my routine. They knew where I slept, how to get in, and how to stay quiet enough not to wake me. Now, I double-check every lock, every window, every shadow in the room. I don't sleep with headphones on anymore, and I never leave my phone out of reach. But no matter how careful I am, I can't shake the feeling that someone's still out there, watching, waiting. And the scariest part? I never found out if they came back.